Okay, Fairfield, you know her as Taylor Ross, but I know her as Taylor Ross. This is Fairfield 2.0. Thank you very much for joining us today. And, ooh, look, there's an instrument on this here table here, if you can see it. And we're going to have a little music later by Taylor Ross. Taylor, Taylor, how are you doing? You're back in town. Taylor's back in town. What's going on?
I just got back to town recently. I had the opportunity to go far away, to faraway lands.
To faraway lands.
And study some music. And then
wow.
I was in India.
Nice.
And I was studying Indian classical music on the mandolin.
Oh, wow.
With this really amazing man there, and it was in southern India.
Who was the amazing man?
His name is Ranajit Sengupta, and he plays this instrument called the sarod primarily, which is sort of a crazy, ethereal, fretless, banjo-ish instrument that you pick with picks made out of coconut wood.
Oh, wow. Wait, is it relating at all to the banjo? Does it have the same kind of tuning or anything?
It doesn't. There are rumors that the banjo is descended from that instrument, but there are also rumors that the banjo is descended from some instruments in Africa.
I don't think that's I think lately, from what I've been reading, I'm starting to believe that that's not a myth.
Yeah.
I think the banjo was from Africa, but what's interesting about all of this is that you can trace all the ethnocentric, like all the things tracing back to more ancient instruments.
Yeah.
Like everything that we just commonly take for granted. For instance, isn't in India they also have the sort of like the drone instrument. What is that again?
The harmonium.
It's just a harmonium. They call it, but they have that other name for it. But it's like it's the harmonium, basically.
Yeah, it is they call it a harmonium. They also have these string instruments that always are the same tuning, and it's always women that just play those in the background behind the vocalist. So they're really into the drone.
They're into the drone.
Keeping the one.
Now you play a lot of instruments. You play quite a few, don't you?
I doodle on a lot of instruments. You play one. It's like you play one wind instrument. You can kind of mess around on most of them, or you play a string instrument and you kind of rearrange. But I think if you know the basics of how notes and scales are built up, then you can kind of adjust it to anything.
How did you learn about all those notes and how they're built up, etc.?
I didn't ever really. I just make it up.
You make it up as you go?
I learned really slowly, and I like that. I started off just playing more intuitively. I had some lessons when I was maybe 13 from James Moore.
Who?
James Moore.
Solar-powered, people-powered Crew FM? Okay.
Formerly known as Jimmy Moore.
Jimmy Moore, known as James Moore?
Yeah. But he taught me some things. All we are is dust in the wind.
And now you've taught me.
And now I've taught you.
Now I also want to ask you, from having lessons from James Moore as opposed to Jimmy Moore, what do you do as far as you're writing songs and you're doing all sorts of stuff. For instance, I saw you perform last night, and you have a natural kind of you have a songwriting style that is Taylor Ross versus Joey Del Rey. Although first time I saw you was with Joey Del Rey playing in the streets. I remember that was in one of the art walks, and heard your music. But how did you get to what is the history of your songwriting? How did you get there?
Well, yeah, I think everybody has a different, having just watched 12 different months of different musicians working on writing their songs in the music residency, which we will talk about as well.
Absolutely.
I learned I had a lot more opportunity to be introspective about how to get more clarity on what my process had actually been. And, tips and not really shortcuts, but ideas for what I could do in the future, like what other people do. And I think everyone has their own. You can study as much music as you want, but that does not give you your own unique songwriting style. And so for me, it was just like life sort of happened. I was really into sports and basketball and soccer and track, and
Were you that kid?
snowboarding.
Did you play all that also in
Yeah.
addition to loving it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I did all that. And then I went to college in Minnesota, and throughout that I would play music in the evenings, and I would just play like solely for fun. And I just always did, but there was no intention behind it. And you know, in high school I started to play a little bit more, but I was never really in bands or focusing. And I remember I wrote like 1 or 2 songs, and it was like the first one was like about suspenders. It was like, I want a pair of suspenders. And then there was like the line was like, you know, there were some lines that I thought were like really like witty. It was like, to pull me in and let me go, to make me spin and kiss me slow. I want a pair of suspenders. You know, it's like.
And we'll be hearing this later, of course?
No. But I wrote that in 8th grade. So, but really, I wasn't like writing many songs, and I played a bunch of sports in college. I went to school for basketball, and then I stopped partway through that and was playing ultimate frisbee because they were really into that. And so I was like really into academics, really into sports, and started playing more music in college with some really amazing friends there. But really after college, I had the time and space to start developing songwriting. And so I spent a lot of alone time figuring that out. And I mean, I haven't really figured it out, but I learned just through watching people and through working on it that it actually takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time.
Isn't it the 10,000 hour thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, and they say that, you know, 10,000 hours to become a master at something, but like, it's not clear how you become a master at a creative process, like creating your own
That's a good point.
identity as, you know, and it can be varied. It doesn't have to be like just Americana, but just building that up. For some people, it just comes really naturally, but for most people, it's just it's a lifelong process.
What did you listen to when you were growing up? What acts? What songwriters, whatever?
My dad was a drummer in a rock and roll band in the 60s, and he had a band called The Tales.
The Tales.
They opened for the Grateful Dead once.
Nice.
60,000 people, no big deal.
T-A-I.
They flew in with a helicopter and were like, hey, we're the Grateful Dead. And my dad was like, yeah, I'm a drummer in this band called The Tales. We're from Madison, Wisconsin. I dropped out of college. Don't do this, kids.
This had to be T-A-L-E-S, right? As in The Tales.
Yeah,
okay.
T-A-L-E-S. I like to think that my name is derived from those days.
Oh, there
but
you
it's
go.
not. But I like to think so.
Rug pulled out. Before we get to the residencies, I want a little more music. You happen to have a sister, don't you?
I do. I have one sister, one and only.
And the two of you sort of make music together sometimes too.
We have. Under the name Margaret, which is our shared middle name, which is the name of our great aunt who raised our grandmother.
Oh, beautiful.
But I got the full name, and she just kind of got shafted and got the Margot. My middle name is Leslie Margaret, and hers is just Margot.
Oh, well.
So it happens when you're the second born.
Pick of the litter.
No, but she's an amazing songwriter. We're very different. She's really tall.
She's really tall.
She's really tall.
She's also really blonde.
Small, but she dyed her hair. No, I mean that's okay. There's nothing wrong. She looks great. Wait. She has an amazing pop sensibility. Like writes really catchy songs, and I've always kind of been the opposite. It's more heady and blah de blah. But I think people start from certain ends and then they decide where they want to go with it. For me, like simplicity in art and music has come to be much more important for me, and that's not that I'm there, but like the things that I appreciate the most are just like really simple but really tastefully placed stuff.
That's what you did last night. When you were playing with Taylor, you're very welcome. When you were playing with when you were playing with Andy Topol, and who else were you playing with?
Galen was on the pump organ.
And Galen.
Yeah.
That was. I mean, to be honest, I could hear your influences as far as maybe even what had just where you just were, and because of the drones and all the things that were going on. You are purely. I would bet that you could be as inspired in an improvisational way as a structured way. I'll bet you it's 50-50
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah, part of the reason that I wanted to go to India was because the music that I was studying is that's a good point. That's a really good point because the music that I was studying is 90% improvisational. In the end, it's 90% improvisational and it's 10% structured, and that's Hindustani northern classical music. Carnatic music is 90% structured and 10% improvisational, and that's southern music. That music is also beautiful, and it's just slightly different. To Western ears, it might even sound the same because we're not used to it. But I am fascinated by even just the theory of improvisation in learning, to just like not just music, but almost as a way of life. Not to get too up there, but with music too, it's not like, oh, whatever goes. It's like honing your own skills and your own reactionary ability and like quick processing ability, but also, so it's like guiding a flow that's not completely constricted. And I've seen people that can do that really well, and they're not just completely, some of them are completely untrained, just like flowing from nothing, and a lot of them have made it a practice to practice improvisation, which has been some of the most amazing music that I've seen.
Yeah. You can apply everything that you just said to the way that you have operated, trying to get, and I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about the flow, the cycle, and the way that you've helped create the atmosphere and the practicality. Is that I'm not sure that's going to be the right word for this, though. Of how the St. Mary's / beauty shop / internship works. Do me a favor. Can you go into how it works and how you choose what acts come into town and how that all works with the town?
Yeah.
How we interact with that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so the Bonnell Project is a project that was started by Andrew Perry and Roland and Steve Cooperman, and they had certain principles of sort of like learning and education and a community organization that they were based in, and it was very briefly just based on like mentorship and guidance for young people, offering a space emotionally, physically, and mentally to create new projects and to guide them in that. And it was really based in just like positive reinforcement, really clear communication, just really simple things, but things that often get lost and become the detriment of any project.
Yeah.
And so the Bonnell Project was mainly based in the Bonnell building on the square, but then they also, that same umbrella nonprofit bought the St. Mary's building. The umbrella nonprofit created a space for the beauty shop to exist. The beauty shop was founded by Phil and Dominic Rabelais, two Rocketeers of Fairfield, Iowa.
Yeah, musicians, producers, whatever, extraordinaire.
Extraordinaire. So that was
big fan.
They're amazing. They started that. They wanted another alternative music venue.
Yeah.
And then a larger group of people began to form that really like helped the beauty shop move along. And my sister came in, I came back to town, and so then there became this more diverse group of people that we were bringing in people that resonated with us and our music styles.
As guests into performance guests.
As musicians, and I was located right in the middle of the country. So that's a lot, the projects that...
It's like, I love the term Midwest.
Yeah, we're really west.
I can drive, we're really easy. We can drive to New York in 18 hours. I can't drive to California.
You're right.
When you're looking at it, I know what you're thinking. When you're looking at it the other...
We're north, yeah. But so people are incredible people are driving across the country on tours all the time, all the time. And so in that music world, in that world today, people are still doing that. And really, if they hear of a place that their friends liked, and it doesn't matter how much money they made, if they made enough to get going the next day, like they'll stop over, especially because we're in between Nebraska, it's like Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, and there's some places, but they're all like 6, 7, 8 hours away.
We get a lot of people that are on their way to Chicago, for
instance.
Instance,
Totally. So in Chicago's a big center, and there's Minneapolis and St. Louis and Madison, and so it's It's actually really centrally located, and that's sort of part of the piece of improvisation in terms of like projects working or not. It sort of fit. It just naturally flowed because geographically it was there, and the right people were there at the right time, and and so.
And so you guys started to bring in acts to intern and teach.
Yeah, so that was a different project. That was like from that, it was built from that. So we saw that people were coming through, and we kind of got to meet. I mean, I didn't know that there were so many people that were making really amazing music all over the place that were not famous or not on like even the indie websites or not didn't have a label because they chose not to or because they just weren't working towards that.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of the inspiration for bringing them here, because it was a fit. That was the thing. It was a good fit at the right time. The idea is bring musicians from out of town, younger musicians who had come through Fairfield already. So we'd met them, and they knew that they liked Fairfield. And they would come and they would be here for a month, work on new material, and teach workshops and give shows in exchange for that. So it was.
And what was nice. So it was, I cut you off. So
no, it's okay.
What was nice about that also was that I remember one of the first people you had here is the guy who I referred to lovingly as Captain Ableton.
Yes.
Who was that again? What's his name again?
Jeremy.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeremy, but you're a dude.
Yeah.
Seriously.
He's right.
He was amazing, and when he came to town, it was like half the town was at the beauty shop learning Ableton.
Yeah.
That happened at an interesting time because everybody here was experimenting, turning the corner on electronica, techno music, etc. So it was really interesting timing. You really nailed that one. And a couple of the other ones, you had Chris Scamahorn come too, right?
He has been over at St. Mary's, he set up his studio. So.
And he came through, but he was one of your interns initially,
Nicholas Naodi was an intern.
Nicholas also, but I thought Chris also came through as one of the because of the pottery and all that. Okay.
No, because it was just musicians, but a lot of these musicians do other things. So they would offer workshops in like printmaking or stop action animation.
I love that. But Nick, I'm talking about Nick. He did that amazing space.
So we had like crazy just.
But that was really legitimately a lot of fun.
And we had, so many people came to that. It was some really successful months. Every month was successful in its own right, and it was community funded. Community members paid $10 a month for a year because they thought it was a good idea, and that was the only way it could happen. And it's because Fairfield is Fairfield, and it's a community that I can go out because I grew up here. Like I can go out on the street and run into so many people that I know and just tell them like, this is a project that I'm working on. Like, do you want to like do that? And then I can run into them 2 days later and be like, hey, do you want to give me that check right now? And it makes it simple. And that's an experiment in just like local organizing, because people were able to choose to support something they thought was valuable.
But you actually, and I want to pay total tribute and big compliments to you, big kudos. You have been the face of that. You have worked so hard. I've watched you in action, you and your dog.
Garbanzo.
You guys, you are amazing. You really have made a difference. And I will go as far as saying all of the activity that's happened because of your organization and also because of the natural growth that's happened out of the Bunnell project. You now have albums happening from the band formerly known as Surgery.
Yeah.
We have all the Rabelais stuff. You have, to a degree, the Trouble Lights stuff came out of there.
Yeah.
You have, of course, all of Dominic's projects. All as in I can't keep up. You have, you had Lane Weaver. You had there's some more stuff I'm not even thinking of. There's a couple of things recently. But I'm just saying, my point is that you guys have been so creative. The atmosphere was a natural, it worked, the experiment worked.
Yeah.
It was such a natural fit, it was such a natural process that people did reach that level of creativity where it's like, okay, now it's time to figure out how to play this out, not just in Fairfield, and to have a thing to sell at the concerts in the very least. And to be proud of. I put this music together.
Yeah. Totally.
Thanks to in some cases the Captain Ableton, Jeremy,
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
that and stuff that you brought in. So I just
Yeah.
want to say I really think you're amazing, which is why I kept harassing you. It's like, you got to be on the show, come on. So
Yeah,
Taylor, thank you very, very much for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Anytime, and come back often if you'd like. But before you go, perhaps you'll be playing a little something on this instrument I see on the table.
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody who's watching this show, don't you go away. We have a Skype interview, but we also have Taylor Ross playing for us. And thank you again for watching Fairfield 2.0, and especially Taylor Ross today. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
Lucky Fairfield, we have John Medeski, keyboardist John Medeski, on the phone with us. And this is going to be a real treat. He has a new album called A Different Time. And let's just dive into it. A Different Time, John Medeski. What time is it actually, after all?
Well, it's kind of now, isn't it?
It is kind of now. What is happening with the? This is a different approach for you on this record, and it's a solo record. Normally, we see you with Martin and Wood and Schofield and all sorts of configurations, but this time out, it's a John Medeski album. What got you to the point where you wanted to do a John Medeski album this time?
Well, I've always, piano was my first instrument. It's what I've always done it. I've always played solo. Been doing, concerts over the past few years, various places. I've been, Medeski Martin Wood has been, like, when we started 20 years ago, it just kind of became all-consuming. But I've been trying, people have been asking me to put out some kind of solo thing for a while, and I've always been busy doing so many things, playing with so many amazing people. I just haven't really made the time for it, so I just finally was like, all right, I got to do this. So I made some time to make this record.
Nice.
But it is something. It's like, I grew up playing piano. It's like it's what, it's one of the things you do as a piano player is you play solo. I played for the kids, cocktail hours, dinners,
yeah,
receptions, kind of thing. That's what you do as a piano player. Solo is just a normal part of the piano player's life.
Now, part of the piano player's life, in your case, also means playing on the, now tell me if I'm pronouncing this right, the gavoe?
Yep, I think it's gavoe.
The gavoe. What brought you to that? What brought you to that instrument?
Well, I never would have imagined it before. That's kind of how things always work for me. I went into the studio. I did it. I wanted to make a solo piano record, so I'm a Steinway artist. So I had a Steinway brought in from New York City. He had another piano there as well as Steinway. It was a little older, and so I recorded. Both. I've recorded a couple. We did it in the evening in order to when it was. It was quieter and everything. So, because solo piano is a very delicate thing to record, and very exposed. But so I did a couple of evenings of playing, trying out these other pianos, doing all kinds of different music, and he had kept talking about this gavoe that he had sitting there, which is an older style piano. It's like sort of the era. It's the pre sort of modern piano that we all associate as the piano. And this particular piano is probably designed, I guess, in the era that of say Chopin, or a little before. And Chopin was known. His favorite piano was this thing called a Pleyel, which is another French piano, and it's it's sort of that vintage of instrument. And Chopin really didn't like the modern pianos like the ones we have today. He felt they were too easy to get a good sound out of. It didn't require the attention and the control. So anyway, I just tried out this piano at the end of a whole recording session. I sat down there, we set up some mics, and I started playing it. And I just what I always do is just dealt with the sounds as it was happening. And I ended up recording a bunch of music, and that's what I ended up choosing out of everything for the album.
Nice.
Because there was just something about it that was unique, and I really liked the feeling of it. And it's not what I expected going in.
Was it more obviously, as you said, with Chopin said it, the piano didn't seem to be as the word wouldn't be challenging, but he felt that it didn't bring out as much of the artist. Did you feel like maybe that was happening with your interaction with the Gavoe?
Well, what I found is that it was a lot harder to control, and it took a lot of sensitivity and a lot of I guess muscle control of the hands to really get a good sound out of it and not have it go twangy on you. It took a lot more, but the payoff was that there was a certain nuance and a certain beauty of tone and singing quality to it. I mean, the thing is, it really influenced the music. I ended up playing this very simple, sort of quieter, more spacious music because that's what the instrument, did for me.
Yeah. Now you have a couple of songs on here. The choice of material for this record ranges from songs from your past, couple of improvisations, a Willie Nelson cover, the "I'm Falling in Love Again" song. What was your approach when picking the material?
Well, when I went in to do the recording in the first place, I was trying to not, because it's like the first record I put out, as a solo piano record. It could easily be overwhelming because there's so many possibilities. I love playing so many different kinds of music. There's so much music that I really relate to. So if I thought about it too much, like, oh, what should I do in this record? I would lose my mind because, the pressure, it's the first solo record, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So my approach was just to go in and play, and, I have a lot of options, and do what I felt in the moment, for that moment. Right. So that's kind of what I did the whole time. So when I sat down at the Gavoe, I did the same thing. I sat down, and I let the sound of the instrument tell me what to play. So I a couple of the pieces were improvisations, and I did some original things. And like for the Willie Nelson tune, for example, I love this song, and I've tried to play it before, but it never really worked for me. When I played it on a regular piano, it was a little too corny, or I don't know the way I would do it. I mean, I love the song. The song's not corny; it's just the way I would play it. But something about the sound, the tone of this instrument allowed me to get away with simpler music in a way that I wouldn't have been able to get away with on a modern piano.
Yeah, nice.
I don't know what it, maybe because the tuning's a little off, or I shouldn't say off. It's just it's a little different than the regular temper tuning, the one that we associate with the regular piano. Right. And so I was able to pull some stuff out that I haven't been able to do.
Nice. Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting to hear, how you handled things like Otis and Waiting at the Gate, a little differently than the original versions there.
Yeah, absolutely. Otis is a tune that was one of, I think it's our very first record, and it's an old tune. But I hadn't played it in a really long time, but I just felt like I would try it out on this instrument, Yeah. And His Eyes on the Sparrows, and all spiritual tune that I love. Same kind of thing, and so it's fun. It was fun for me to see what. When I play music, I'm dealing with the sound,
Yeah.
And the instrument defines that in a lot of ways. And then I try to use whatever instrument I'm playing, whether it's organ, whether it's mellotron, whether it's piano, modern piano, whether it's an upright, whatever it is. I try to let whatever the instrument's sort of sonic universe is. I let that sort of lead the music and dictate what I should do.
Yeah.
So this is different.
Right, and especially on songs like Graveyard Fields and is it Lacrima?
Lacrima, yeah.
Lacrima. Those are improvs. And you, I mean, I'm imagining you sat at the piano and just sort of let it come out. Did the instrument help influence what was coming out?
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, because when you're improvising, you're responding to the sound that's coming out and the feeling that it creates, which leads you to the next moment when you add something. Yeah. And it's like that's cumulative. You just keep adding and growing, and then a piece of music evolves from there.
Yeah. Now the OK label, it's great that this album is coming out on the OK label, which of course has a beautiful history of having folks like Duke Ellington, etc. on there. Now you're part of that lineage. How do you feel about your place in music? Like, do you see yourself as having some sort of other than just being the creator of a lot of great music? Do you feel like there's any kind of responsibility or any kind of role or anything that John Medeski can add that's very different than everybody else that you'd like to get out there purely for that reason?
Oh God, I can't even think like that. It's not really my place, I just play, I create music. I mean, I feel like, what I want to do is that, for me, it's very, I'm sort of here to improvise,
Yeah.
and I really, like playing live music, and in a way, I mean, I don't feel like I'm part of any sort of, I definitely don't feel like I'm important in any way,
Well, let me
historically.
Well,
Not the way that Duke Ellington is important. Louis Armstrong, these guys are truly important. I'm definitely not in that league or in that category. But what I do, want to do personally is more and more. And I think that's sort of what's implied in the title, "A Different Time," is or one of the implications of "A Different Time" is that there was a time when we listened to music differently. When music was part of our existence in a way that the language of music was born. And I sort of feel that, although I'm not anti-technology, there is something lost with the fascination we have with what we can do and how much, how much we can store on a very small space and all this stuff that really pulls us out of our deeper connection to the language of music, which is a language, and an important human language, and probably the first human language. And so for me, it's like, I feel like, what's important for me is I want to, tap into that and bring that, keep that alive as much as possible.
Right.
Sort of, and it's like, I grew up in an era where we would listen to records. We had to get up and flip it over. We had to be engaged. I didn't have, of course now I'm like everyone else. I've got a bazillion songs on my computer,
yeah.
And I can pop it on random if I want. But I just feel like there's a certain intention in listening that's really important.
Yeah. All right.
And so, that's what I feel. If anything, I feel like that's what I want to be part of and create more and more.
Of music not of a different time, but really just keeping that spirit, that sort of the reality check of where music is coming from, etc.
Yeah. Because when we tap into that, music has its real power. And it's not really about I mean, it's fun to watch YouTube and check all this stuff out, but it's like there's another level of power that music can have if you allow it, and that's up to the listener. It's not up to the player. It's how you listen to music that makes the difference.
Yeah.
And how you listen to music affects how someone plays music.
Nice.
If the audience is listening in a certain way, it creates a space where the music can go far deeper, and the musician can go, into realms that you can't get to when people aren't listening. When people are just, busy holding up their phones and recording it, and whatever, when they're just more interested in connecting with someone who's not in the room to tell them what they're doing than just being in the room and connecting with everybody there and with the music.
Being in the room almost being a metaphor for being in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Being in the moment instead of trying to connect with someone or something, out there that, it's weird.
Yeah. No, I got it. Now, I want to also throw out there the concept of, Duke Ellington also didn't know in his time that he was going to be as influential. He was going out there making music. I'm not.
I think he lived. I think, he was a national treasure, and so was Louis Armstrong by the end of their lives. They did it, and they knew it.
Well,
they deserved it.
Yeah, by the end of their lives. But I also want to point out that what you're pioneering and what you were doing, either as a solo act or with Medeski Martin Wood, all of these different variations that you've been a part of have also been on the firing line, have been on the front lines rather, not the firing line, on the front lines of how improvisational, feel, almost pure feel recordings can be made. And so I would argue that your story isn't quite done yet.
I hope not. I hope not. I feel like I'm just starting.
Yep, you really are. Hey, I have a question that's traditional, which is, and then I have a follow-up question, which is somewhat in the same vein, which is, what advice might you have for new artists?
God, it depends on what front. I mean, the only advice I would give is, really is, you really need to tap in to your voice, your musical voice, and, I'm hearing a lot of stuff out there that's just very derivative, and not that we can't draw, and that we don't use, whatever chords and notes. I mean, there's only so many, and we all rehash them in our own way. But I think it's important for anyone. In order to be an artist, you really have to your connection to these notes and to these rhythms and to this, to the language or to the vocabulary of music needs to be your own. You need to really dig deep to find that. And I feel like one important thing is to slow down, to slow down and absorb. We don't, I mean, if there's an artist that you love and you want to learn from, and you really need to, pick a couple of things and really of theirs and really learn them, really take them in, really absorb them, spend a month working on it, just listening to a couple songs over and over and over, You get to slow down. It's what I would have to say. It's like, it's maybe, and I think that the other thing is you don't need to be afraid to check other music out.
Yeah.
If you have your own voice, you're not going to lose it.
Nice. Yeah. Who were some of the people you checked out?
Oh man, I mean, so much. At this point, right? I mean, there's so much. I mean, everything and anything. I figure if I start naming anybody, I'm going to be leaving stuff out.
All right. Hey, what was the best advice that was given to you?
Best advice was given to me was when I was a kid and I just started getting into jazz. I've been playing classical music and I started getting into jazz. But the best advice I got was about how to practice. Actually, I'll tell you, there were two things. One was that after I did a little technical warm-up, was before I started working on any music or any things that I wanted to learn, I was told that I should just sit down and improvise, create something from nowhere.
Yeah.
Whether whether it was a thought, whether it was an emotion, whether it was something programmatic like playing a car crash or a lizard running across the floor, whatever it was, just to play that, just to do that and record it and listen to it, and it was great advice because it really enables you to discover your connection and how music expresses things for you.
Wow.
Personally. That was great advice. And the other really good advice that came from the same person was, if anybody asks you to do a gig, say yes. Just say yes. And if it's something you don't know how to do, say yes, and then learn how to do it before you get to the gig.
You know who you have that in common with, which is amazing, or that person rather, is Rupert Holmes. Said that to me. He said that when he was younger, the best advice that he'd ever gotten was basically, or rather, the thing that he felt was one of the best things he ever did was when people sat down with him and said, "Hey, Rupert, can you?" He would go, "Yes," immediately. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, that's it,
Yeah. All right. John Medeski, your new album, A Different Time. You're going to be going on the road to be supporting this?
Yeah, I'm doing some solo concerts when I can. I have a lot of other. I'm doing a lot of other things. I'm working with Medeski right away. I'm doing a lot of gigs with John Zorn this year across the planet for his 60th birthday celebration, and but I'm doing as many solo gigs as I can.
Nice. What do you think? Let me ask you. Just here was a big fat loaded question. What do you think is the state of improv and jazz these days?
There's incredible players out there. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great stuff. There's a lot of great improvising happening out there. I don't know. The state of the music is fine. There's great places. In Europe, there's a whole incredible scene of sort of, has taken a left turn out of the jazz world into its own universe of improvisational music that's fantastic. The same thing in the U.S. There's tons. There's great music happening everywhere. What is not in a great state is the music business. I don't know how anybody, unless you live in Norway where the government supports artists, I don't know how anybody's going to survive and do creative music in the near future.
Yeah.
It's a worry, it's like, unless you live in the world of grants and, and patrons. We need more patrons out there. But that's the part I don't know. How that's what worries me. I'm not worried about the music. The state of music is great. The musicians, it's always happening. The creative impulse is there, and people are, people will find a way with whatever tools they have to create. I just don't know, who and how people can make a living with the way. Everyone just thinks music should be free for them. They don't even, it's like they don't know where it comes from. They don't fathom supporting it.
Yeah.
Everybody from everybody just wants, and mainly big companies, stores and things. They just want to have music playing, background music going, and not pay for it. They think it should be free for them while they're making millions and trillions of dollars.
Yeah. It's a re-education. It doesn't make sense. It seems like there needs to be some sort of re-education, and I don't even know how you get the word out at this point.
No, it's a reaction. There's a reaction. There was a time when, record companies were kind of in control and making a lot of money, and I think it's good that part of the paradigm is being knocked down. But, I just worry about musicians, how we're going to make a living, how we're going to survive, feed our families, have shelter. It's like,
Well,
you kids, it's like, it's going to be, it's pretty hard, to dedicate your life to music and have a day job,
Right. Well, it is the next frontier. That it seems to be the next frontier. How to shift into whatever the next paradigm is, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, John, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming to Fairfield 2.0 and also for the Huffington Post. And I wish you all the best. This is a wonderful album. And you said you were also going to be doing another one with your pals, Martin and Wood.
Oh, yeah. We actually are going on the road soon. And we'll be working on another record this year for sure.
Nice. All right. Well, all the best with that. And please, let's do this again real soon.
Great. Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Take care, John. Bye-bye.
Talk to you later.
See you. Bye-bye.
Hello, I'm Taylor Leslie Margaret Ross. I'm here to play you a few tunes on the mandolin and voice. And this song is called Umbilicus. Here we go. And I saw that you were connected to me, and I didn't know how I could feed that umbilicus of natural love, hardened and dried over seasons. And the starlight was bright, but so was the night, and the velvet blue overtook me in the case of this flight. I did not know it's right to kick out or give into the hurting of the sheep of my heart. You play a large part in the breaking of all out shaking from outside. The eyes cannot hide from stereoscopic engravings of the photonic lines inside the old mine. Explosions of rocks and the shavings, a desert of air. All the way up there, these crackers, comets are quaking. Will you want what you want when you get what you get? Or have you moved on to the next parapet? We are only as deep as our ceilings. What you want you'll get, but the catch finds you yet. Will you want what you want when you get what you get? Or have you moved on to the next parapet? We are only as deep as our ceilings. So this is called Compass. I'm called Taylor. This is called Savannah. I keep trying to hold on with an iron grip, but my hands can barely hold this whip. To prod the horses of my will forwards. Candles burn low, but even so, the flame it grows higher. In the light of the night, our ashes are carved of ash and stone and fire. And the wax it pools at the foot of the towers that pretend to be the moon for all the moths this hour. And they stopped flying higher, thought the compass was the fire. So before you sleep and after you wake, make sure you take the time to calculate. Does your compass lie in the moon or in the fire? The moon, she cries out, look at me, I'm so far away, but my crew light is constant, that you know. Just use me and see where you gotta go, you gotta go. So jump in, my young friend, don't worry what's round the bend, 'cause mysteries are plenty, even in heaven, and the call of the wild is knocking at your door, you should open. So before you sleep in your fresh bed of pines, and after you wake with the sky in your eyes, just make sure you take the time to finalize where your compass lies. And after you sleep in your fresh bed of pines, and before you wake with the sky in your eyes, just make sure you take the time to finalize where your compass lies.